Increasingly, I have clients that are frustrated that it's taking so long for their case to get to trial, right? And most of that frustration is born out of a sense of immediacy and entitlement. And, we want it now. We don't just want it, we want it now. We got an app for that. Why should I have to come to court more than once? Why is it taking you so long to get ready? Why? And so I've tried to put together, sort of a process, so the first thing you have to do is go through the discovery. That takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. The state has to get the documents. They have to get the witness interviews. They have to get the lab results. They have to get this, that, and the other things. So you have to do a discovery review. Second thing you have to do is your own investigation and your witness prep. The third thing is do legal research and motion practice, which varies from case to case. The fourth thing is develop a case theory, right? You have to learn what your case theory is, which is going to be different in a white-collar case, which is going to be different in a cartel case, which is going to be different than a DWI case. They're not cut and paste, right? We're not just doing, you can be the greatest, appendicitis doctor in the country, but that's not going to help you if you need to work on a knee. So it's going to be different in every case. The next is jury selection strategy. What are you looking for? What kind of jury do you want? What kind of jury do you not want? A lot of times you're dealing in there, Aaron and Tommy, with focus groups and with mock trials. The next thing is cross-examination prep. There is kind of where the metal meets the road in a criminal case. Your cross-examination, more times than not in a criminal case, is you're going to stand or fall on that. Your direct examination prep is certainly important. Getting the exhibits together, preparing for your opening and closing, getting the client ready, and the last thing, and I want to touch on this and go a little bit sideways, is lawyer self-care, because the older I get, the more that I recognize that my mental state is really going to have a much larger impact than I recognize that it might have as a younger lawyer, right? If I'm not in the right mental state, it's going to affect my game. And my wife always says I'm the happiest when I'm in trial, which just tells you how fucked up I am. I actually like being in trial because I don't have to worry about anything else. I don't have to worry about the client that wants my call back. I don't have to worry about the next case coming up. I've got to stay focused. It's like being in a football game or a basketball court or a car race. You've got to be worried about what's happening right there, right now, and that's cathartic to me. But I had the good fortune, next slide, of meeting this guy last night, as a matter of fact. And,
oh, wow.
And I wanted to meet him, or I wanted to include what my experience was. So this guy is Rich Deviney. I think that's how you pronounce it. But so there's poor prep right there, because I don't have his name spelled right in the slide because it's different. I missed the E. But I have always been fascinated with the preparation and the mental strength of the special op guys, right? And he's a retired U.S. Navy SEAL, 20 years as a Navy SEAL, 13 deployments, and he was the officer in charge of the training for SEAL Team 6. Let me say that again. That dude trained the SEAL Team 6 for, I think, 10 years. What I didn't even realize until last night, because I've got some friends that are Navy SEALs, but I didn't realize till last night, in order to be on SEAL Team 6, yes, that's the SEAL team that took down Osama bin Laden, but in order to get on SEAL Team 6, you have to be a SEAL, right? And you have to be a SEAL from units 1 through 5 for at least 5 years, and then you get an invitation to apply for SEAL Team 6. So the washout rate of SEALs in general is 90%. 90% of those kids that show up and apply to be a SEAL washout, 90%. So not only have SEAL Team 6 gone through that that crucible, they have been invited after years of commitment and service to the other SEAL. They have to go through another one. So these guys are the elite of the elite of the elite, right? They are just walking badass. But Rich has, and we got to talking last night about, he said, look, it's not that we are trained killers, right? Yeah, we got some of the greatest marksmen in the world, the greatest explosive guys in the world, the greatest, water guys in the world, whatever. He said, but that's not what's our focus is. He said, we're surgeons. We don't go in there and take out 16 guys. We're hired to take out one guy. But he's got 2 books, both of which are listed there. I've read through about half of them. But his whole focus is the mental discipline and the recovery and controlling how you react from a cerebral cortex standpoint. And that stuff is fascinating to me because I'm the guy, if I ever played football, I'd let a game beat me twice, right? I would. I'd be so pissed off about losing that game. It would affect my next game. And this is what I'm into at my decrepit age, is really controlling how my mind reacts to things in times of stress, right? And his tagline is, "We are masters of uncertainty," which is a brilliant thing to be if you do the math on it. And in my world, that should translate certainly into every aspect of your life. But in a criminal trial, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's shit that you just can't plan for, or you just don't plan for. And how you react in those uncertain times is easily the difference in being successful or unsuccessful. So I would love to get Rich on. He's in town. He now coaches CEOs and executives across the country, but maybe we'll get lucky enough one day to have him on. But that whole discipline is fascinating to me.
So what nugget can you share from the Masters of Uncertainty, or speaking with Rich, or a Navy SEAL that you could share with us?
You know, it is just so he gave the explanation. We were talking last night, and he was talking about the 90 and 10, right? And the 90% that wash out and the 10% that make it. And I said, when you were going through basic training as a SEAL, did you ever think that you weren't going to make it? He said, I never thought about it. He said, what do you mean? He said, the guys that focus on whether or not they're going to make it, right, through the end of the training or the end of the exercise or the end of the discipline, those guys wash out. He said, I never thought about the next day or the end of this day. I thought about the next 2 minutes. I thought about the next 60 seconds. It's minute by minute, hour by hour. He said, and the guys that came in and were focused on, winning that day, those were the ones that washed out. And interestingly, Tommy, he said, as the SEALs, because everybody wants to be a SEAL, right? Everybody wants to be an orthopedic surgeon. Everybody wants to be a trial lawyer, whatever. And I'm not equating being a criminal defense lawyer to being a SEAL by any stretch of the imagination. But everybody wants, my point is, to be a quienes mas macho guy, whatever, or woman. But he said, not one Division I athlete, not one that has ever applied to become a Navy SEAL has made it. Because those guys come in expecting to be the best and the brightest and the coolest things ever, and the baddest and the fastest and the coolest and the neatest and the prettiest. He said not one of them made it because they were focused on the end and not the process. I mean, it's kind of Nick Saban-like, right? Saban always preaches, it's the process, it's the process, it's the process. And it's the same thing. So, and I'm listening to the Masters of Uncertainty now, but I asked him, what do you mean the attributes? And he said, I'll give you a perfect example. He said, we had a guy, and of course they strap you with all this kinds of heavy stuff, and this kid shows up, and this was at Bud's at the first training, and he shows up, and the instructor said, okay, I want you to go from this end of the pool to that end of the pool and back, and the guy jumped in with all these heavy weights or scuba gear or whatever, and he was walking. He wasn't swimming, right? He was walking on the bottom of the pool, but he made it. And the captain or whomever said, what the hell are you doing walking? And he said, well, look, Captain, I don't know how to swim. And he said, what the hell? Oh, okay. Well, here's the deal. If you can make it, if you can walk it, if you have the discipline and strength to walk it, that's an attribute. That is a mental attribute to allow you to effectuate and complete that exercise. We can teach you to swim. That's a skill. But most people don't have the attribute of being able to do that. We can teach you the skills. Teaching swimming, we can do that. But that is an attribute versus a skill.
This is fascinating to me, and I'm going to pull an Aaron moment and mention that in high school and in college I swam, so I've always had a fascination with Navy SEALs, and in the off season we would also always do like Navy SEAL sort
right.
of trainings or exercises. So as much as the physical probably takes away candidates, like, because to be a Navy SEAL you have to be super strong and physical, but I would assume that they would describe it as like 99% mental,
100%.
Which is crazy because it's just so physically demanding. And for them to describe it as mainly mental is just crazy to me. I don't know if Jocko or David Goggins are Navy SEALs. I think they are.
They're both Navy SEAls. I asked him about both of those guys.
Okay, what did he say?
He said they are both exactly who you think they are, right?
Okay.
And he said, I trained with Goggins, and Goggins always, we got to go run 20 miles, we got to go run 40 miles, we got to go run 60 miles, and he's like, dude, we have to learn to shoot. We're not going to be running around in Afghanistan for 20 miles. We have to get our shooting down and our breathing down and our planning. No, we got to go run 60 miles. He said both of those guys, Jocko and Goggins, are the same exact guys that you would think that they would be. And and why I really enjoyed talking with Rich, I'm so embarrassed that I stumbled on his name, Bill McCraven. Although it was Rich's guys that were trained on the Osama bin Laden raid, it was McCraven that organized that raid, right? You talk about an OG, that motherfucker there is an OG. He would later become chancellor of the University of Texas system, but McCraven and I were at UT at the same time, which I guess increases my fandom of him. But apparently we went to different fraternity parties because I never saw him. But he was the one that led the raid on Osama bin Laden. He was the one that trained that. And there's a special out on Netflix on that, which is just fascinating. But anyway, Rich said, I got to work with McCraven. I've read all McCraven's books. He's just wonderful. And I said, like a little fanboy, what's he like? Is he cool? He said he's just lovely to work with. And for those guys with that sort of gravitas and that sort of experience and that sort of commitment to the country is fascinating to me. He shared one other story with me that I'm not sure he would want me to share, but I'm going to anyway. So during the height of the whole Colin Kaepernick thing, when he kneeled, right? And everybody was, oh my God, that's so disrespectful. He said, I was asked several times by people, dude, you trained the SEAL Team 6. What do you think about that? And they expected the answer to be, oh, that's so disrespectful to the flag. That's just, he said, we go to war to defend someone's right to burn our flag. That's what we are defending. We don't cut and paste. They have that right. I might not like it, but we defend that freedom, and that just brought chills to me.
That gave me goosebumps just now.
It's just like,
I love that. I feel like that's some real shit.
That's some real shit.
That's some real shit.
Instead of this cut and paste,
that's such
Christian
bullshit.
Nationalist crap.
That's always those are the ones that
literally gave me goosebumps.
Those are always the people who like just sensationalize that bullshit.
It's our Secretary of War?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
No, that guy.
That's real.
That's real.
That's real.
It's not a bunch of performative bullshit.
Yeah.
That dude is the real deal.
Yeah. Shout out to Rich. Like that
podcast coming soon with the Navy SEAL. That'll be
well,
sweet.
He's got his own podcast, so let's throw some love his way. The Rich Roll
podcast. We'll tag it on some of the posts as well. Like shout out to Rich, and we'd love to do a collab with him and distribute on both. But that's cool stories, Dan. I appreciate you sharing that. I didn't realize you had just met with him
last
yesterday.
night.
Yeah, that's crazy, and that's awesome, man. Shout out to Rich. Shout out to Navy SEALs. Cool. So speaking of Secretary of War and just the current administration and things that are going on, Comey is getting through his indictment pretty effectively, it seems like. Dan, what's your insight on what's been going on in this Comey case?
Yeah, so let's back up. And again, I've got Trumpers and the double Trumpers and triple Trumpers, and every time I say anything negative about Trump, they light me up. That's fine. It's a free country. But I don't think what a lot of folks realize is how stacked Trump's deck is with lawyers that were his personal lawyers, right? So in the White House alone, he's got 4 lawyers that were his personal lawyers. David Warrington, he was White House counsel. Will Schaff, he was White House staff secretary, was also Trump's personal attorney. Stanley Woodward, he represented Trump's associates in the classified documents case. Alina Habba was counselor to Trump. Those are the White House lawyers. He's also got lawyers in the Department of Justice that were his personal lawyers. Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, was a lead attorney for Trump in his Manhattan hush money case. Emil Boeb he's a principal associate deputy attorney general. He worked with Blanche on Trump's defense team. John Sauer is the solicitor general. He was Trump's personal lawyer. Kendra Warden, she is the associate deputy attorney general. She worked on Trump's case in the Jack Smith. So those are 8 lawyers either in the White House or with top positions within the Department of Justice that were Trump's personal lawyers. Now, that's never been done before. There's never been anything like that before. Oh, and of course there have been relationships between, I guess most famously, Bobby Kennedy and Jack back in the day. But these are 8 people at least either within the White House or within the Department of Justice. So he's stacking his Department of Justice and his White House with his personal lawyers. I would argue, no matter how objective, fair, decent you want to be, if you were somebody's private lawyer, it's going to affect your advice to them in the Department of Justice or within the White House. So what's happened, for example, with Pam Bondi, her primary qualification to me is just her unfettered loyalty to Donald Trump. She was a state attorney general. She was part of his White House counsel team, part of his impeachment team in 2019. And this is the one that just blows me away. She's the person who authored the legal opinion that Trump could accept the $400 million plane from Qatar. She was also a lobbyist for Qatar. Now, to me, that raises a few red flags, but whatever.
So what does that mean?
Well, what does that mean?
If she was a lobbyist.
She worked for him. She got a paycheck for him. So on the one hand, she had been paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, from Qatar, and she's telling President Trump, oh yeah, it's perfectly legal. It's not a violation of the Emoluments Clause. Again, this is not a Republican, conservative versus liberal Democrat thing. This is a what the fuck is happening here thing, right? And people aren't seeming to put these pieces together. Then we've got my main man, Kash Patel. Kash went to the Pace School of Law. Again, I went to South Texas. I'm not throwing stones, but neither Pace School of Law or South Texas is a hot breeding ground for Supreme Court justices. He was a state and federal Maine justice prosecutor for a bit. We'll get into that. And he founded the Kash Foundation, which helped raise funds for January 6th defendants. Let me say that again. The director of the FBI, before he became director of the FBI, established the Kash Foundation, which raised funds for people charged in the January 6th attack. To me, that's just staggering. And again, you can call me a liberal, you can call me a Trump hater, you can call me whatever. It doesn't really matter. In my little worldview, the attack on the Capitol on January 6th bothered me more than 9/11 because these were our own people striking at our democracy. These weren't outsiders. These were Americans, and of course they've all been pardoned now. But he founded a foundation which helped raise funds for their defense. That sounds hypocritical coming from a defense lawyer. It probably is. I get that. I'll suffer through the hypocrisy label. But you know, those of us in Houston that were around 10, 15 years ago, we knew who Kash Patel was. Kash was working as a Justice Department lawyer in the National Security Division, and he flew from I don't even know how to pronounce Tajikistan. Thank you. To a Houston federal courthouse right down the street to join a terrorism prosecution against this Omar Faraj Saeed al-Hardan. So he shows up in front of Judge Lynn Hughes, and it is absolutely true that Judge Hughes did not suffer fools from Maine justice very well. He had a high distrust of Maine justice prosecutors, but he showed up in his first appearance in front of a federal judge that had been proceeding for weeks without a suit and a tie. Let me say that again. He shows up in a federal trial without a suit and a tie. Now, to me, that's a little deeper than a breach of dressing etiquette. That shows deep disrespect for a federal judge. I would never in my wildest imagination think that, hey man, I'm going to go into the Eastern District of Virginia and I don't need a coat. I don't need a tie. I don't need a suit. I'll just wear, my Birdwell beach breeches or whatever. So he shows up, Judge Hughes confronted him and said, if you want to be a lawyer, dress like a lawyer. And again, that rings a little truer for me because I've said it on this podcast about 58 times, but he told him, you may be excused, and removed him from the courtroom. Hughes then issued an order of ineptitude. I didn't even know that was a thing, which was a scathing rebuke to Patel, calling him out for his lack of professionalism, his lack of preparedness, anyway, that guy who couldn't be bothered to wear a suit and a tie to a federal court and a federal trial that had been going on for weeks, he is now our director of the FBI, which is just amazing to me that he's the best we got for that position. Seriously, that guy. Let me put it this way. If a lawyer came to me and I was going through his application process and I had found out that a federal judge had issued an order of incompetence, I probably wouldn't hire him. In fact, I am certain I wouldn't hire him. But that didn't stop Donald Trump from appointing him as our FBI. Then we got this guy, Todd Blanche. Now look, here's the interesting thing about Blanche to me. He's not a guy without credentials, right? He was prosecuted in the Southern District of New York for 17 years. He had clerked for 2 federal judges before that. I mean, the guy knew his alpha from his beta. He had some skins on the wall. He represented Trump in his losing criminal case, the New York trial that he lost, or that was lost, and we can argue fair, unfair, and frankly, I think that was a bullshit trial. In a lot of ways, I'll say that. Just like I think the accusations, those accusations at least against Biden's kid, were kind of bullshit. But be that as it may, he represented Trump, but he was Trump's personal lawyer. He's also the same guy as the Deputy Attorney General, who many would argue is the most important person within that office, because the Attorney General, Bondi, is a purely political appointment, and it's always the Deputy Director that knows where the bodies are buried. But he's the same guy that met with Ghislaine Maxwell alone in prison and questioned her about whatever she was questioned about, and she suddenly got moved to again, a location not far from here, when a women's prison that she was not qualified to get into. I say all of that as a backstory to simply try to paint the picture that what is going on with Comey is completely predictable when you consider the lineage that we've just discussed, right? This is a retribution tour that Donald Trump is single-handedly orchestrating, and he has created a hit list of his retribution victims or whatever that he's going after. And again, this ain't liberal versus conservative, Democrat versus Republican to me. This is like nothing that's ever happened. It is so open and obvious of what's going on. It just, why the country is not more outraged than it is beyond me. It is, I do not understand.
Dan, I'm curious, you say it's beyond you and you don't get it. But what is it about Trump where even you breaking this down and just sharing facts and giving a little context and kind of history and who these people were prior to the administration, even just sharing that information, as soon as someone's ears kind of hear that this is like bad, or it makes Trump look bad, or it's just not normal, that they're like, oh, whatever, you're just a lib. Like they just go to the side where there's no real defense, but it's like it's just this hardcore right versus left thing where everything you just said was just a historical kind of review of what's going on. You didn't really say anything bad, So what do you think it is that causes?
Well, I didn't say anything that was untrue.
Untrue. That's better said. You didn't say anything that was untrue. So why is it that when information is shared like this, people just they're not going to absorb this. Like the Trump haters will like love stuff like this, but the people who love him will be like, I don't give a fuck what any of this is. Like, he's our president. Now, what is it about the society? Have you ever seen this in our culture prior?
I think what's happening is nuanced, complicated, yet completely obvious. We are losing as a nation, not as individuals, but as collectively as a nation, our willingness to engage in constructive conversations, right? We are all about the brand. It's all about what jersey we are wearing. It is UT versus A&M. If you went to A&M, you're an idiot. If you went to UT, you're a tea-sipping, overprivileged weakling, right? It's all about the color of our jersey. And that is being magnified, amplified, repeated every day through the algorithms of social media, through the willingness to brand people, and the refusal to we don't listen to understand anymore. We listen to reply, right? Or we listen to respond. We're not listening to understand. And again, I'll get a lot of hate for this, but I blame much of that on who our president is, because we've never had a president that normalizes hate and rage and criticism the way he does. And it happened during the first campaign when he made fun of the retarded person, when he calls people stupid, when Charleston they had both good people on both sides. It's just, it's gone on the way and every day it gets worse. I made a comment earlier about the country is in a shutdown, which it is, and at the same time, Trump is building a 300 million, 90,000 square feet ballroom. Well, that's not that's fundraising. It's not the Americans' money, and I didn't say one was the cause of the other. What I said was, here the country is shut down, and the president's primary focus, it seems, is building a ballroom. What the fuck? That's not why we elected you to be president, to pave over Jackie's rose garden and build a ballroom. Now, Rich pointed this out last night, my Navy SEAL dude. He was saying, hold on. He said, if you'll look back, literally every president since Eisenhower has said we needed a ballroom, because what happens when we have these national or international events? They build a tent, and some of these international leaders come over and think, what the fuck? Why are we under a tent? And he's got a good point, right? And I thought, well, okay, that's rational. But my point is, and that's more than fair, but my point is, why are we focusing on that? We have so many more problems to focus on than building a Trump-branded ballroom. I don't understand that. And I don't understand why more people don't say, what the hell?
Yeah, this is crazy, and I really appreciate the context and putting the color on what's going on. In regards to Comey, Dan, do you have sort of a bold prediction or something that you predict will happen in the next, 6 months, a year, something like that?
There's no way that guy gets convicted. Ain't gonna happen. Just absolutely no way. I think it'll be tossed out because, and let's go there for a second. So Trump appointed a U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. As I've said a few times, the Eastern District of Virginia is one of the gold standards within the Department of Justice. Those are really good lawyers, really good judges. That's where you either want to go there or the Southern District of New York. Those are the Ferrari and the Lamborghini of the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Department of Justice rather. But he appointed a veteran prosecutor to become U.S. attorney. He gave that prosecutor the instructions: indict Comey, indict Letitia James. That prosecutor couldn't find the evidence to do it, and Trump said, if you don't indict him, you're going to be fired. So he resigned. Trump then brought in this other woman who was once again one of Trump's personal lawyers. She was an insurance defense lawyer. She'd never been in a grand jury room her entire life. And she got no support from the other prosecutors in the Eastern District of Virginia. And spoiler alert, there are plenty of pro-Republican prosecutors within the Eastern District of Virginia, right? It's not a bunch of Democratic libs there. They're pretty tight-ass people there, let me tell you. But no one within the office would support her, so she personally went in and had the grand jury indict Comey, and she personally signed the indictment, right? Which is just unheard of on so many different levels. So it's just a continuation of the sad expectation and the predictable reality that case that indictment is not worth the paper that it's printed on. I think it'll get dismissed because I believe the law is you can appoint one U.S. attorney, you can't appoint a second U.S. attorney, and that's what Trump did in this case. And I think ultimately, if the case doesn't get dismissed, he'll be acquitted by a jury. And again, I'm not
that's
a huge
Comey. That's Comey getting not convicted.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge Comey fan. He did some stuff that raised my eyebrows. But what's happening there is just unprecedented.